Hi there. Welcome to Creation Station Monthly. I'm Bob from Creation Station. If you missed any of our previous episodes, remember on your favorite podcast feed, Broward Library, Creation Station, get it every single time right in your feed for you. This is our monthly show where we spend about 45, 60 minutes talking to two creative people about what makes them tick. How did they get into the field? And what's different about each of their different perspectives on it. Remember, they haven't met each other until 2 minutes ago when we just started our show. So let's introduce who we've got here. Kristen, how are you doing today?
I'm doing so well. I'm in California. It's a beautiful day, low 70s. Can't get much
Oh,
better.
that is very nice. A little
Yeah.
cold for me, South
Yeah.
Florida, but
Yeah.
we woke up this morning and we were a little cold. It was like 77, and I'm like, no, no, no,
Oh,
no, this is way too cold for us.
yeah. Get out the fleece.
Yeah, exactly. And Bonnie, you're coming to us from, are you in New York still?
I'm in New York and it
Okay.
is actually the same temperature as it is in California right now. So
Excellent.
we are happy here.
So,
Yes.
Bonnie, I want you to lead off. Tell us about how did you get into painting, and what is it about painting that started you on this creative journey?
Yeah, so I think I was always like a creative child, but I never really got into painting or drawing, which I think is kind of like the default creative
You
activity.
never finger painted on the walls?
Okay, maybe when I was like really, really little, but not that I can remember. And um, so where was I? Yeah, didn't paint when I was younger, and when the pandemic hit actually is when I decided like maybe I should try drawing. I think like now that I think about it retroactively, I've always wanted to like make pictures and be good at like creating pictures, but I just never really got into it. So the pandemic hit, everything kind of, you know, went away. And so I was like, maybe now's the time to learn to start drawing. I ended up taking some like online drawing classes. And then when things started opening up, I took more like in-person drawing sessions. And then I don't know, it just kind of progressed into painting from there because I wanted to try out colors using paintbrushes. I'm really into like the aesthetic of the paint stroke. So I think that's what drew me into it. And here I am. It's
How about you,
been two
Kristen?
years.
How about you, Kristen? How
Well,
did you get into this whole?
very similar to Bonnie. I feel like our choices were get into creative field or bake bread or drink alcohol
We
all day.
did baking
So
last year.
yeah. So I'm kind of like Bonnie. I've always been creative, and I'm the youngest of five, and my mom always did such a good job of trying to help foster interests and having our own unique identity. And even from a young age, she really fostered us being creative and having imagination, creative energy. So she would get us a little tape recorder, and we would make our own radio shows or whatnot. Wish I still had those. But then, also during the pandemic, I had never done an actual official, creative thing. Like you're saying, Bonnie, the tradition being painting, drawing. I always felt like that was inaccessible to me just because I didn't have experience in it. So I decided, well, I don't know how to do it, so I can't do it. But like most people in the pandemic, I was having a hard time. And I remember my mom kind of kept urging me to do something creative. And actually, right before the pandemic started, my grandfather passed away, and I remember we had to go through his house, and each of us grandkids got to pick some things that we wanted to keep as a keepsake. And I remember my mom kind of shoved my grandma's art supplies in my hands, and she said, "You should take these, Chris." And I said, "Well, Mom, I don't do art." She goes, "You should take these. I really think you can do something with these." So I took them, and then the pandemic started, and they just kind of sat in the garage. And I would look at them and think, oh, that would be kind of cool if I honored my grandmother by taking those up, but I didn't know how to do it. And then my mom said one day, "You need a hobby." And that's where it all started. So I impulsively picked watercolor, and now here we are. And really just tickled pink that I'm on a podcast for the Broward County, Florida Library.
Right.
All the
We
way.
get some fun things here. So fill me in on that, how that creative streak starts then. Because I will admit, I am very much in your boat, Kristen. I'm like, yeah, I don't draw, I don't paint. I have art that I need. I go out and buy it or I
Yes.
hire it or whoever for
Yes.
that kind of thing. How do you break that for the people out there? How did you two break your idea of I can't do that, but I'm going to anyway?
Yeah. Bonnie, I'd actually love for you to start because I already know my answer. So to me, it's boring because I know it. But I'm but I'm so curious about yours because it's so fun to hear somebody else who just thought, I think I'm going to start drawing. And then you did it. And especially because
Yeah.
you draw figures and people, to me,
Mhm.
that's so much more technical than what I do, which is landscape. So that's not something that you could
Um,
just do.
I don't know if it's more technical, but I I have a hard time answering this question actually. Why did I suddenly just do it? So, okay, I guess my background is the creative thing that I actually did do, starting from high school was dance. So I was like really, really into dance. Like it was my life and blood, and it was like more important to me than like my job, really. It's like that important to me. And when the pandemic happened, you can't go to dance classes anymore. And so I was kind of like not twiddling my thumbs at home, but like that's when I started exploring a lot of other things that I kind of sort of had an interest in, but didn't really like get to prioritize it before the pandemic. So when that happened, I kind of cycled through a lot of hobbies, especially in like the early pandemic days. I got into like building keyboards, like really obscure things.
Build.
And
Oh,
if,
I got to hear this one. Building keyboards, like computer keyboards,
like computer mechanical keyboards, not
so.
building them from scratch, but I would buy like kits and then I would switch out like the keys to make them really pretty and like design like my like
The lights
mix
and
and match
stuff.
the keys. Yeah,
Good.
put in lights and
Okay.
stuff like that. So,
Oh,
and then I
and
got
lights. Okay, so you're an electrical engineer at this
I
point.
am not an electrical engineer, I wouldn't say that, but I bought some boards with some pretty lights and then I ended up so my like day job before I became a painter is actually in software engineering. So kind of a sister field. But yeah, so that's how I got really into keyboards and that kind of thing. Anyways, going back to figure drawing, this was near when things started opening up in the pandemic. And I think it's because of like I've always been really interested in the body as a dancer, and so that just seemed like the most interesting thing for me to draw. And so I took like a life drawing or I went to a life drawing session. There was actually no instructor in those sessions. It's just like you have a model who is usually nude and you just go in and you sit, you come with your sketchbook or whatever. And I had no idea what I was doing. I just bought like a really cheap sketchbook and I brought a pencil. Like I had no idea what I was doing. I was like, well, no one else is going to see my sketchbook. So it's fine if I just like make a fool of myself, which I did. I had, again, no idea what I was doing, but it was so much fun that I just kept coming back every week. And
Can
this
I
was like,
interrupt you for a second?
yeah, of course.
I just love to see. I'm interrupting. You told me to.
Good. Yes.
It's good.
Yes.
I like it.
But I love to hear this because it's so interesting, especially for people who aren't used to the world of figure painting or, everyone has their own comfort level with nudity. The way I look at the figure painting class like that is that some people might look at the model as being the most vulnerable because they're nude. But then to hear your side, the artist is being vulnerable too, because especially someone like you're going there and you're thinking, don't let anybody see my sketchbook.
Yeah.
Just like most people, have clothes to hide them. So on both sides, it really is an
Yeah.
exchange of vulnerability because the artist is showing, part of who they are through their craft. And then obviously somebody is nude. So it takes a really joint understanding of the two sides expressing vulnerability. So that's really cool to hear.
Yeah, that's a beautiful way to put it, actually, because I do feel like, you're drawing like a live person who like is a person. So it's not like you're drawing, your cat who won't ever judge your paintings, right? So yeah, but there is that level of safety, I guess, where like you don't have to show anyone if you don't want to. But yeah, I've heard this from a lot of people that, oh, it's really intense that when you started drawing, you started with like nude figures. So I totally get that like dual vulnerability that you put it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'd love to hear your story, Kristen. How'd you like turn on the switch? You said you knew the answer right away.
Yes. Well, so my switch finally flipped kind of near the end of the pandemic when things were getting fun again. I was still kind of in my doldrums. So that's when my mom called and said, "You need a hobby." 'Cause she could just see me floundering. So good job for mom's intuition here. But I'm kind of I love to be able to be spontaneous. That's when I feel the best. And kind of similar to what you were describing, Bonnie, where you said you were trying all these different things. I feel like when somebody has a stronger inner creative, that it really to me feels like hands trying to reach out and grab something. You're trying to grasp some kind of creative expression in your life because it feels fulfilling. And so that's where I started. Was I could tell I needed something and I wanted something, but I didn't have art experience. And so I didn't know where to go. So, similar to you, Bonnie, I went on Amazon and bought a book called 365 Days of Creativity. And it's 365 prompts for how to be creative. So I started there, and then my mom called and said, "Get a hobby." And that's when I just picked watercolor. And as it turns out, it was a great choice because watercolor is one of the more cost effective and easy to get into mediums of paint. So thank goodness for that.
Okay, this is where the outsider has to interrupt. Tell me about this. Why is it more cost effective for watercolor and painting than?
Yes. So I learned this after I chose it. Just glad. So watercolor, the actual pigment that you buy is just a lot less expensive than something like oil or acrylic. And it also lasts for way longer because with oil and acrylic, you put the paint on your palette. And as soon as it's there, you have to start using it. If you were to put it away, I have young kids. If I were to put it away because my kids got hurt or something, it's going to start drying. If I don't use it, then it goes bad and I have to use more paint later. With watercolor, you purposely dry it and then you reactivate it with water. So you can put it down and walk away for a year or a decade and you can come back and keep using your watercolor. And because it's dried and you just reactivate it with water, you just use less pigment whenever you paint. Okay. Another nice thing about watercolor is you could take it anywhere. So you could take it outside and paint. You could take it on a trip with you and paint. So it just is very convenient as far as paint mediums go, and just costs less. You don't have to buy canvases. Those get really expensive. You just buy paper and paint and you're ready to go.
Cool.
Yeah. So anyway, long story short, I felt a need in me, and then I chose watercolor, and I just started learning through YouTube videos. I was really frustrated for a long time, but this is my first foray into actually using YouTube for something more than just, funny cat videos or what have you. So I actually used YouTube for learning, and it's a good experience.
And Bonnie, how does that match up with because I've seen, besides just your figure drawings, I've seen you doing the really nice calligraphy type stuff. How does that match up? How does those two things intersect for you?
The calligraphy and the figure drawing. Right now, they don't really. I think that I'm actually trying to get them to match up a little because I think they would really complement each other. Right now, they're pretty distinct practices still, but I started calligraphy earlier this year, just at the beginning of this year. Again, I'm really interested in kind of the line work of a paintbrush and the brush strokes. And so I think starting calligraphy, especially Chinese calligraphy. So my parents are Chinese. And so there's a little bit of that, getting more in touch with my heritage. I started that because the feeling of the brushstroke on the paper is just so satisfying to me. And like you said, so I started with drawing, so charcoal and pencil. I love charcoal, but I wanted to draw on something or create on something more sturdy. So I did start buying canvases and playing with acrylic, which are very expensive.
Yes.
Yep. I learned that. But yeah, because canvases are so expensive, I was I don't know, maybe it was me thinking it was a little precious. So that's why I decided that was around the same time I got reintroduced to calligraphy because as a Chinese kid, you kind of see it around here and there, but I never practiced it as a kid. So yeah, right now those are two different things, but I actually really want to incorporate the brushwork of calligraphy into my paintings. I think that's going to be like my next iteration of my art style.
Have you ever done watercolor?
I have not. I don't know why, but it makes so much sense, right?
It
Because I
makes
think
sense based on what you're saying.
right, but I
Yeah.
don't know why. I think because I'm really I'm like around a lot of watercolor art, or I don't know why. There's like something that I think it's because watercolor is very like soft colors,
Mm,
and I'm like a very like it's
bold.
black or white or
Yes.
bold or like
Yes.
royal blue. Like I'm
Right.
that those are what I lean towards. So I think it's that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it makes so much sense. I almost want to like get into watercolor, but
Yeah.
I've just never been drawn to it in the same way.
Yes.
And Kristen, how'd you pick landscapes?
Because I don't know how to draw. so, so what's really nice about making a mountain is that it's like this. Okay, anyone can draw a mountain. Not everybody can draw a beautiful human being, then not make them look ridiculous. But
Trust me, I
landscape,
didn't know either.
yeah,
I could not do it in the beginning.
yes, I really admire you just jumping right into figures. That's actually a painting from Haley Titus. I was in college with her, and my husband and I went to an art show, and I saw her name. Hadn't kept in touch with her since college, but there she was. So that was fun. But I did landscapes because I'm a very free type of personality. I like to just go for it. You know, I don't like to waste my time reading instructions and things like IKEA manuals. That would be waiting for me in Hades if I were to go there someday. So just don't like reading, researching. I just want to go do. And so landscapes really work well for that because you can look outside or you can, go to your favorite lake and you can look at it and just go for it. And that's just the way I love to learn. And I do go on YouTube and I watch tutorials and I learn a lot through them. And that's really how I learned to do watercolor at all. But my favorite way to learn is just to fumble my way through it. So doing landscapes gives me a lot of freedom to fumble without failure because a landscape can be as abstract as you want it to be. And I'm sure, Bonnie, that you can say the same with figures. There's so many amazing artists that don't do realistic figures. And that's the joy of art, is that they all look different ways. But I do want to get into drawing and figure painting, but I think I need to go to a class through the local community college to really just get the basics on perspective and all that so that I don't get too frustrated.
I think that drawing nature and drawing figures is actually very similar because like we are part of nature. Like what I love about drawing figures is that there are no straight lines. And the same is true in nature. Like everything is a curve, like every branch, every leaf, every petal, it's a curve. And because this is like their organic forms. And so I think there's actually a lot of similarity. And I would love to incorporate like motifs of flowers and like bamboo or trees into my paintings as well.
Gosh, Bonnie, you're so talented. I love your paintings.
Thank
You both have. There's a reason
Yeah.
why I invited you guys both here. And I want to bring that up because you're both doing your own. You've come to your own way to this. And by the way, in the comments, people are also saying, "Yeah, very nice work." And so my question for you is, how did you decide on sizing? Because looking at these two, I noticed yesterday when I was preparing some stuff, I was like, wait a minute, Kristen's like fits right there in her hand. And it's there. Bonnie's like doing a full blown 6 foot tall. I don't know how tall they really are, but they look huge.
I think Kristen should go first because I know my answer for this one.
Okay. Well, watercolor, there's a big challenge in making larger watercolor because in order to get pigment onto paper, it's water in a brush and pigment in the brush. And there's only so much water that can be held in a brush. So to do a very large watercolor is very challenging, especially for someone like myself who is a hobbyist who is learning through YouTube. There are certainly watercolor artists that make larger paintings. But for me to be able to do that, I'd have to have larger brushes, more expensive. And at this time, it's just so fun to knock out a really nice 5x7. And I feel like that is my skill area, is that I could do that at this time with the tools I have.
Cool.
Okay, Bonnie.
Yeah, that makes
How'd
total
you
sense.
get to that big then?
So it really started in the beginning, like in life drawing. I noticed that when I was like drawing the figure, I would think like, oh, if only the paper was a little bit bigger, so I could really like use my arm to like
Mhm.
draw that curve. If only it could be bigger so that I could draw it like properly. And so I think even in the beginning, I really gravitated towards like large movements and like this really free form, like drawing with the whole arm kind of thing.
That comes across through your paintings.
Thank you.
They,
Yeah,
they have so much movement, and like you were saying
yeah,
earlier,
that's
organic. It looks
Oh my God, thank you so
very
much.
free.
That's exactly what I want to get through. I think also because like I'm used to dancing and it's like
Mhm.
using the whole body, it just feels so good to me. And so slowly, like I also started as a hobbyist and I just kind of bit the bullet and like gradually got bigger and bigger until I painted my largest size painting, which is 4 foot by 5 foot. And that is by far like my favorite piece that I've ever done. And I feel like that just like came out of me really naturally. And like I was really surprised by how well that turned out. But yeah, I think at this point I just want to draw paintings like the same size as me.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage to do that because you're staring at this huge blank canvas and you know you're the one to fill it.
Yeah, I think that's why I had to like work up to it. Also, they're like the
Expensive.
materials get more and more
Yeah.
expensive. So it's like it
Yeah.
better be good if I'm gonna do this,
Yeah.
you know?
Oh my goodness. I know. I feel that way even about watercolor paper. If I do a 10-inch by 12-inch, I think,
Mhm.
oh my gosh, this paper costs $2. Which in the world of watercolor, oh my gosh, you know, versus what a canvas is. But I even feel that way at a much, you know, more small level. That you're looking
Oh.
at it and you want to do well and you put pressure on yourself, but then also you're thinking about all the dollars and cents that go into it. But you
Oh
gotta
yeah.
just throw that to the side. It's just paint on canvas or paint on paper, and it's just fun.
Yeah, I agree. I think there was definitely like this mental jump this mental hurdle that I had to get over where I'm like, you know what? I'm like investing in my hobby. I'm investing in this like in my
And
creative
your
outlet,
joy.
in my joy,
Yeah.
exactly, in my expression,
Mhm.
and now in like my career. So there are these tricks that I play on my brain to like justify, but I totally get you kind of have to like it's like a big deal to go
Yes.
bigger.
Yes.
Yeah. So now I want to slip into that one there. Bonnie almost slipped it in for my next question is, Kristen, you took a big leap and you started doing classes.
I did.
And so, and then we'll get to Bonnie's big leap that she just finished. I want to hear your big leap first. How did you find the way to teaching other people now that you learned this skill and then being able to teach it to other people, or at least let them explore their own skills?
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Good question. So what Robert is saying is that I started teaching watercolor classes, just beginner watercolor classes, because I still feel like I'm beginner intermediate. So I'm not a professional, but I feel that I know enough now to save people from all the awkward fumbling I did trying to learn about watercolor. And my previous career was at Hewlett Packard for 10 years, and a large part of the time I spent there was training new hires. So I got to travel and teach all over, and it was really fun. I loved presenting, and it just brings so much joy to me when I see people's light bulbs turn on. So the reason I started doing the watercolor classes is, one, I just like to teach and to share, but two, I think about my own journey that I have always thought, oh, I can't do art. I like to be creative, but I can't do art. I'm not an artist. And even after I had been painting for 3/4 of a year, if people would say, oh, you're an artist now, I'd go, no, I'm not. I'm not an artist. I don't know how to do that. But then I realized, no, I'm making art. I'm an artist. And I just put a lot of thought into how culturally art is really put kind of on a back pedestal. Like if schools have money for art, they'll do art, but only if they have the money. And if people have time for art, maybe they'll make art, but a lot of time they don't because they have to do all these other things. So all these people are walking around with the power to create art, but they think they don't have that power. They think they can't because it was never made important in their life or their sphere of thinking. And I had felt that same way. And once I actually pushed myself to do it and to actually try and get over the hump of thinking, oh, I'm terrible at this, and then realizing, oh, I can do this, I wanted to help other people feel that way too. And what's really cool about it is that almost every single person, so far it's all been women, almost every single woman that has come to my class walks in. I have them in my home. They walk into my house and they go, I'm going to be the one that's terrible. I have no experience in art. I'm going to be so bad, but I'm just here for fun. And I say, you'll be surprised at how you feel when you're done. Because every single one of those women, without fail, at the end, looks at her painting she made and goes, I can't believe I made this. Because people don't know they can create art. They just don't know. And so that's really why I wanted to get into it. And with a beginner level class, it's accessible to everyone. Anyone can do it. You just have to kind of be pushed there and to get that one win to help you know, oh, I can do this, even if I don't have a history in it. It's just so much fun to see that.
And Bonnie, now tell us about your big leap you just took there.
I am guessing
Your
you're
show.
talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Doing a professional show in New York.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I think the first leap was actually transitioning from like my engineering job to becoming a full-time painter. And then once I did that transition, I just applied aggressively to like different places to see like who would show my art. And luckily some of them responded positively. But yeah, I think it was really the transition to deciding like, okay, this is going to be my career now. And that was, I think, because I have, like I mentioned in the beginning, I've always been like a creative person, and a desk job is not really my thing. Even though I tried to convince myself it was. I spent so many years like trying to be like, it's not so bad. I'm just gonna sit here and like, it's not so bad. I get paid really well. It's fine. But I think it was one of those things where like I've done it for enough years that I'm like, I know this cannot be my calling. Like this is definitely not my calling. And I think that being a dancer was like part of it, and now being a painter is part of it. But it really sums up to this, I guess, calling of being like a creative expressor of sorts. And it almost like right now, I think painting is the medium that I'm like the most in love with. But who knows? It could like go into other things in the future. And I think that it was really time for me to start doing this as my career, not necessarily painting, but like acting on my creativity and like, yeah, doing it as a career, like really driving it forward so that it goes somewhere instead of just me kind of like sitting on it all these years while I worked like a 9-to-5 job.
Bonnie, do you, there's this kind of false dichotomy that exists about you're either an engineering mindset or your creative mindset. You're good with numbers, or you're good with understanding emotions or art or whatever. And now you're obviously both. So you're a software engineer and you're an expressive person. So do you feel like people in your life or even yourself are surprised at this change you've made from being a software engineer to doing what you're doing now?
No, I honestly think that we are all both. Like how you said, you think that like everyone walks around and they have it in them, but they just don't act on it. I think that's so true. And we just like put ourselves in these boxes where like you're either really logical and rational or you're really creative. But I think that like that's like doing a disservice to ourselves, because like I think creative people can think very logically and rationally and can run businesses, and like logical engineering people can also be very creative, and like but like we all are. And so it's just like what part of you Creation Station. Oh my God, it's a gear. I just noticed
Yeah.
the logo is a gear. Exactly. It's
That's
just
what I
like,
do. Robots
yeah,
and VR, and then being cool and creative with other things. Yeah.
there you go. Exactly.
So let us go to, I have the silly question I warned you I was going to ask. Okay, Kristen, how many times have you or the kids taken a drink?
Oh, thankfully, only me.
Okay.
Thankfully, unfortunately, also me. I have, in the year and a half that I've been painting, and it just happened about 2 weeks ago, took a nice juicy gulp out of a nice moss
no.
green. Yeah, it was great. It wasn't even a nice
Oh,
like
no.
berry color. It was a moss kind of grayish green. Oh yeah, it's great. So I've been told many times by my watercolor friends, only bring a lidded cup with you. But I guess I like to be rebellious in ways that don't matter. So I keep bringing an unlidded cup to my watercolor station. So it finally happened. Yes.
How about you, Bonnie?
I luckily have never had that happen to me yet, and I hope it stays that way.
Yes.
It does not sound pleasant.
No. Oh, it's just a great surprise.
I saw. So, one of the questions that we always try and ask everybody is, rather than asking what's your biggest success, because you guys have both shown you've got a lot of successes, what's the biggest failure that you feel you did? Because I think people learn a lot from having a failure and moving on from it. What's the big failure that you had in being creative, whether it's in painting or beforehand, and saying, okay, yeah, I messed this up, but what led you on to that one?
I'll start.
Go for it.
I would say, thankfully, since at this time, I'm just doing this for my own, personal enjoyment, and then doing the watercolor classes, I thankfully don't have to feel pressure to create for a certain event or reason. So I think that takes a lot of pressure off. But I will say the times when I feel like I'm failing is when I'm trying to be too much like other artists. And you get that a lot, especially if, in my case, I'm trying to learn through watching YouTube tutorials. So they'll say, do this, and then do that. And if I'm trying to do those things and I can't do it, even if what I put on the paper looks lovely, I'm mad and I hate it because it doesn't look exactly like the lady told me to on the YouTube video. So, that was something I had to get over in my own, internal thinking, is trying to compare myself to what other people are doing. And then also putting false pressure on myself to continuously improve. That was another thing. Bonnie, I don't know how active you are on social media, but now my entire Facebook feed or my Instagram feed is all other watercolor artists or figure artists. And so sometimes I'll look through there and I think, oh, I'm not doing well enough because I'm not doing what they're doing. And so then I'm thinking that I'm failing in a way because I'm not living up to what other people are doing. But what a bummer that I'm doing that to myself, because there's nobody that's expecting that of me except for me. And it's for no reason. So I feel like those are my failures. I guess my failures at times is my, when I put too much pressure on myself to be something that I don't need to be, when really what I'm here to do is just express. So it's not necessarily a failure of a specific thing, but just a failure to myself, of being kind to myself in my own creative process. But I really do try to overcome that when I sense it.
You wouldn't be here if not.
Yeah, I actually, even before you spoke, I was pretty much going to say the exact same thing.
Oh, I'm so glad I went first then.
But I can give you a specific example of this, which was when I made the jump to leave my daytime job to pursue painting. I treated it almost like if I was my own terrible boss, where I'm like, okay, I have to have 5 paintings done by the end of this week, and they need to all be in this style. And if I don't have it done, then I'm a failure. And I just really pushed myself in ways that I really did not need to, and that took all of the life out of it. And
what a way to sap creative energy than to put parameters on it.
Exactly. Exactly. And I have the paintings now. They're fine, but like I don't completely love them, and so I have a hard time selling them for that reason. I think like if it doesn't like really come from deep within, I think that's when you have a hard time like talking about it and being excited about it, and that comes across in like your business. And so yeah, I think there's like so many examples of this whole like putting unnecessary pressure on ourselves as artists to be a certain way, whether it's like comparing our style to other people, or like comparing our business to other people, or comparing like our teaching to other people, like just all of that. I think like that very specific example of when I had this like basically boot camp week that I expected myself to turn out 5 painting in 1 week. I was like, why in the
You
world
will
would I ever do
create
that?
and you will like it.
No, oh my God, like never do that. If you
Yes.
are an artist of any kind, like never do that to yourself.
No, I actually did something similar to myself because this very kind woman at a local nursery gift shop, plant nursery gift shop, asked if I wanted to participate. They have a third Thursday where they have art vendors and wine and all. Just it's fun. It's not even an art show. It's just you get a booth and you get to sell your stuff. And she asked if I wanted to do it. I said, yes, of course. That sounds so exciting. And it felt like such an honor. And then for the next month, all I did was feel angry whenever I thought about it because I was putting pressure on myself. Like I have to make really good paintings and they have to be great. And then I didn't do anything. And then when I would try, they would look terrible because like you're saying, it was me forcing myself to try to make something that was cool. And then it was so bland because it was like an operational thought process versus a creative thought process. So I ended up telling her, give me a year more of practice and I'd love to participate again later, but it just really, it doesn't work that way.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And you don't have to, I mean, Bonnie has been able to successfully do it, but not everybody turns their hobbies into a career, which is actually where we're going with the next question is, what do you think society out there thinks both about painting in particular, about whether it's a hobby, a career, etc., but also about what you individually do? I mean, portrait, like Bonnie, your portraits are really artistic. They're really, you feel exactly what's going on with those, but they're not like
a daisy on a notebook kind of thing.
Well, no, actually where I was going was more like portraiture type of paintings where it's like here is the king on the and the same thing for you, Kristen. I mean, I didn't show all of your work, but you've got some little bits and pieces there where you did stuff on wood instead of that. And tell me about where that type of creativity of what you're doing and what you think people think about you when you're not producing what they expected you to produce.
Yeah, I can talk about. Yeah, I think when people hear artists, I think they think of either like you are world famous and earn billions of dollars, or you are a starving artist. And I think that sucks. Like this dichotomy is just unrealistic and so demotivating for anyone who wants to turn it into a career. So I want to help like be an example of, just someone in the middle who earns money and survives off art and also might not be like world famous. And I think because I'm so early in my journey, so I launched my art career at the end of last year. So it's been like around half a year, which is really early in any kind of like business. Any kind of entrepreneur will tell you that it's only been like 6 months. Like you're not expected to make a profit yet. And so I've had to work through a lot of like mental blocks myself around that and being okay with like this dip in income before I actually see it grow and I actually can enjoy some profit off of it. So that's like the art part. And I think the figures part, I don't think I've been compared to like art masters or like the oil painting masters. Maybe it's because of like the circles that I run in. I don't really run in like the professional art communities that much. So luckily I haven't dealt with a lot of that, but I am painting like women and sometimes nude women. And so it is kind of like not safe for work, you could say. And
It's safe for work. It's safe for the library.
it's safe for the
Your stuff's
library.
good.
It's good, but I don't know. I might do more nude stuff soon, and it's kind of like pushing the boundaries, because I think that I do paint from a place of like honoring like femininity and sensuality, and unfortunately that kind of stuff has been censored even on Instagram. Like I posted a picture of my painting, and they like I was going to boost the post, like turn it into an ad basically, and they rejected it because they're like, we can't allow nudity in an ad.
Mm,
And I'm like, it's a painting.
yeah.
And so there's a lot of that. And also in the dance world, like I've already experienced that, so it's kind of just like more of an extension of that, and that is an ongoing battle, I would say.
There's a lot to unpack with figure art, because from what I see in the community that I've found of through Instagram, which I know a lot of people can say bad things about social media, but I have found the most interesting, wonderful, wildly creative people through Instagram communities. But through the figure painters that I've met, what I love about what figure painters are doing is helping separate a woman's body from the sexuality. That she could be a sensual being that is expressive through canvas or paint or whatever medium that's being used. And it doesn't have to be thought of as bad, or that's naughty, or, that's something that's not safe for work, because especially in America, there's so many wildly strong opinions about nudity. But I love and appreciate when figure artists are able to separate some of the weightiness of morality around a nude figure. I don't know if I'm expressing myself well, but there's just so much beauty and vulnerability in a figure that doesn't need to be tied purely to sex. And that's what I find so interesting about figure art, is that it can be expressive without having the weightiness of that attached to it.
Yeah, I think it is a fine line. I think I'm like riding that line where I do want to center like sensuality. And a lot of painters are like, I follow a lot of like erotic painters and stuff like that. And I don't think my art is quite in that genre, but it is about like enjoying your own body and like just expressing with your own body. So you're right. It's like there are so many layers to this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Get your whole podcast on that. I don't know if it's library appropriate.
No, we've had some talks about the appropriateness of things and this, that, the other. We've had some different types of people in our entrepreneurs series. Okay. We've had some other individual people like that.
Okay, good, because I got really nervous saying the word sex on a library podcast.
Heck no. It is part of the real world. This is part of what we do. Yeah. And we make it appropriate. It isn't a thing for it to be for an appropriate audience. That's what we do.
Yep.
Libraries are here to help everybody reach out.
Yes.
And,
Great philosophy.
Yeah, we're trying. We are trying. Everywhere in the country should be trying. The other one that I wanted to touch base with, though, for you is, I'm a tech guy. I do all the cool technology stuff. So what is the ultimate cool piece of tech / gear that you want? Is it a quiet place where you can lock away the kids so you can paint it out? Or is it some really cool stuff that's out there that I don't know about? My whole thing with painting, like I know like the Fanta Black type of ultra dark paint, and or the Pantene.
I've heard of that.
Whole controversies about which colors are we going to use and which ones are trademarked and everything. So tell me what your cool tech / ultimate idea of what you want to use is.
I can answer that right away because it's something I actually just bought myself. So for people like me who don't have foundational drawing skills, there's an app called DaVinci Eye. And it's an app where you put a picture on your phone and then you have the phone resting on like the edge of a cup or whatnot, and it projects an image onto your paper that's underneath your phone, and then you trace the image from your phone screen onto your paper using a pencil. It's very hard to explain. I just did a terrible job trying to explain that. But long story short, it's an app that helps you draw an image, like a trace an image. I love it. Yes, there it is. So it creates an opaque picture for you to then see through your phone screen and draw it onto your paper. It's $20 for an entire year. Well worth it. So someone like me or Robert, someone like you that loves technology, you can draw something and then shade it in with charcoal like that guy, or paint it. That's what I do, is I draw with pencil and then I paint it in with my watercolor. And that has, I feel like it's opened up a huge new journey for me, because now I have confidence to draw something. I still need to take a class so I can learn how to do it myself. But in the meantime, it's an amazing tool to help.
Cool.
Yeah, I think even for people who know how to draw, I guess, I've seen like a lot of artists who do that just to save time. Like if they just want the proportions right, and that's not necessarily like the focal point, and they just want to like add the color, like that's the main art that they're doing as expression, right? I've seen a lot of artists use like projectors, or this phone thing is really cool.
It's so great.
Yeah, we've used a projector here with kids and taken a picture and put it up on the wall and had them, here, go color that in, go draw that in, go do whatever.
Yep.
So we have about 10 more minutes, and I know the next question could go for 10 hours, but AI and art, Midjourney / whatever other things you want, go.
Okay, I have thoughts on AI and art. I think that people who are scared, so I guess I'm not sure about people who kind of like have creative careers whose jobs might be in danger because of AI, but this has been happening for like a really long time. So art is not, it's not like it's not new to the art world. But I think art as like creative expression is not threatened by AI, because the whole point of art is that it is expression. It's almost like a conversation that the artist is having with like their audience. And so you can have a conversation with AI, but that's not the point of the conversation, right? Like the point of a conversation between two humans is like connection. And that is something that AI cannot provide. So I think that people who are really like, who are thinking like, what if AI replaces all artists, doesn't really understand the purpose of art.
Yeah. You know, there's a local artist, an oil painter in my town, who did something clever with AI. She put an AI input for some goofy kind of fantasy still life. So it was kind of like these robots made out of washers, kind of in a still life bowl, like how you would typically see a bunch of fruit in a bowl, and then an oil painter does that. But it was these washer robots. And then she painted it with oils. So she got the AI prompt and made art, printed it out, and then painted it. So she actually blended AI art and then created, physical art with it. So, being a hobbyist, I don't feel that AI is a personal affront to what I'm doing, because it doesn't change what I'm doing. But it certainly can feel like a threat to people whose livelihood depends on creating art. But to Bonnie's point, art is so much more than just looking at a thing. It's creating a conversation. And for someone like myself, even if I wasn't making art, if I feel like somebody made something versus it being made with their hands versus being made in a machine, I would have a preference towards the thing that's handmade, because I know that there was thought and heart put into it. So I think there's cool stuff that can be done with AI, where it can be part of a conversation in the art world. But it's certainly not something that I would look at. If someone put a prompt in and, spit something out, it wouldn't have the impact on me if it were made by a real human.
Okay.
It's a big
now-
one.
No, I know. No. I know. We did a show just on AI about 2.5 years ago,
Yeah.
almost 3 years ago now. And yeah, it is a enormous thing, copyright / inspiration / all of the other pieces. But what you just said, Kristen, actually tickled like, wait, I should have asked this question at the beginning. What's the difference in between what both of you do physically versus digital art? I mean, if I were to take and I've got my pen and I'm drawing and I'm just doing fully digital in Photoshop or whatever other thing, what's the difference that your physical art brings that digital art doesn't? Not AI, but just doing it on a screen.
Like to a viewer, like what is the difference to the audience or to us?
To you, either way.
Well, so I have several friends that I met through social media that do digital art that is just breathtaking. It's amazing what skill level they have. There is so much freedom in digital art because you can use any medium digitally. So they can buy brushes that are for watercolor, brushes that simulate oil or acrylic or charcoal or whatnot. So they have a lot more room to play. And I kind of envy that because they're able to, futz around with all sorts of different things. The other thing I envy about digital art is that they can erase things, and I can't with watercolor, especially with watercolor. That's the one that you can't go back on. But there's a place for both in this world, and there's people that have such a clear preference for digital art because, you can create, very bold colors or make it, well, anyway, I'll just stop right there. And then there's people that have a preference for traditional art. I think it just comes down to who's looking at it. I prefer traditional art myself just because I don't know, I just like it. But I also have such a deep appreciation for digital art because you got to put just as much practice into digital art as you would if you were creating it traditionally.
Yeah, I think there's very little difference. It's just like, to me, I just think of it as a different medium. Like I think digital art is as different to watercolor as watercolor is to acrylic as acrylic is to oil. It's just there's different properties that you work with. There's different like tactile feelings that you get from traditional versus digital. It's just like different choices that can be made, and like it's just a different paper and a different pen. That's all that is.
And doing digital doesn't mean you're going to be any better at doing that than a traditional. I couldn't get an iPad and then draw a figure well just because it's digital. I'm going to draw the figure as poorly digitally as I would on a piece of paper. There's really, except for the idea of being able to erase something because it's digital. You're still creating the same art digitally that you would on paper. But that's very different than from AI, which is where you put the prompt in and it's created for you.
Yeah. We've taught a couple classes. We've played around with the AI stuff, and it's a very interesting genie that's been let out of the model, and how we're going to play with this.
Yeah.
It's going to be interesting. Thank you both so much for being here today. This was a really fun conversation. I've got both in the show notes for everybody, links to both of their pages, so you can go follow Kristen and Bonnie and go see what they're doing out there and everything. Let me bring up our final slide here. As always, you can reach us at creationstation@broward.org if you have a question for our guests, and I'll send it along to them for you. Other than that, we will see you next month. Have a great time, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye.
Hi.